Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show and another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series, our Arsenal chat show where I'm joined by a guest to have a talk about all the happenings and ongoings in the current state of Arsenal affairs. Very happy to be joined by Andrew, aka Arseblog. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
I'm good, thanks, Tom. How are you?
Yes, very good. Very good. I did that thing just as I was coming onto the podcast where you sit up way too quickly and give yourself the worst headache in the world. Other than that, completely fine.
Okay, it could be worse. You could, get dizzy and pass out, and there wouldn't be a show at all. So we're thankful that you're here, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, wishing good health for everybody in the chat box too. I hope you're doing good, people, and I hope you're enjoying the series at the moment. We've been showing a lot of love for our 8 a.m. transfer shows. I hope you're enjoying them. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And of course, go and check out Arseblog and the Arsecast too. And speaking of transfers, Andrew, it is that crazy, wacky time of year where it's kind of the main talking point, despite the fact that football's going on or not going on in the case of Arsenal. I mean, that's actually, I'm interested to kind of ask your point of view on this, because I've seen on social media you're not really shied away from replying to a couple of tweets on the matter. What do you make of kind of the reaction to specifically Arsenal being postponed?
Look, I guess that what we have to say is that we have our very own, very specific sphere of online existence when it comes to Arsenal. So, we don't tend to pay a great deal of attention when they talk about other clubs, or certainly I don't. But there's no doubt in my mind that the reaction to the North London derby being postponed and the focus on Arsenal is not something that was present for all of the other postponements that have taken place, 19 or 20 of them beforehand. So look, there are reasons, right? North London derby is a big game. It's a more exciting game than Burnley versus Leicester, which was called off last weekend as well. So I get why there's a bit more focus, but I think what I found surprising is that, a lot of people who talk about the game, who write about the game, who are employed, in journalism, in broadcasting and all of that, have chosen to focus more about like Arsenal letting a couple of players go on loan than saying, you know what, these rules that are in place are not good enough. There is it's not a loophole, but there is a flaw in this rule that is written, which means that clubs, if they have injuries, if they have absences that aren't related to COVID, still mean that a game can be called off. And I don't think that's what they were designed for. I just think this is something that has happened. So I've been a bit surprised, to be honest, because the focus should be on the rules. And how do you make these rules better? How do we avoid a situation like this again? How do we prevent a backlog of fixtures piling up, particularly after they've been really crazy, when come the summer, we're heading into a winter World Cup and player welfare and the demands on players are going to be even greater than normal. It's been surprising to me that it's been like, well, Arsenal have tried to get away with one here, or Arsenal have pulled a fast one, when in reality all Arsenal did was apply for a postponement under the rules, and those rules were the same rules that every other postponement was granted under. So we haven't done anything underhand. We haven't done anything that anyone else did. It's just really weird. But I have enjoyed the fact that Arsenal fans online, Arsenal Twitter, is really sort of unified behind some of this. And I'm not saying, I don't want people to go piling on or lumping on individuals or anything like that. But I think if you dip your toes into the water, a good few days after all this has happened, you can expect a bit of reaction. You poke a hornet's nest, don't complain if you get stung.
And I mean, if there is one hornet's nest you don't want to poke, it is the Arsenal fan base. No, I wrote about this the other day. In fact, I said it's the best possible time that Arsenal could have really united as a fan base. We're in a period where, there's an opportunity to get top four this season. We've got some really tricky fixtures, or we had with the Spurs game coming up. And still Liverpool, of course. And, Burnley's never easy for Arsenal, it seems. But it's great to see kind of this unity in a way. There's been so much division, be it managers, be it Granit Xhaka, be it Mustafi transfers, Raul Sanyehi, Ivan Gazidis. But finally, we found something to really, unify over, and it is our hatred of other fans hating us, which is, nice.
Yeah, we do find. I mean, look, we can find anything. You put 3 Arsenal fans in a room, and within 20 minutes, there's going to be a faction. There's going to be 2 against 1 or 3 against 3, whatever it might be. But it's like having a really annoying little brother, isn't it? Like, you can do what you want. He's your little brother. You can beat him up. But if anyone else goes near him, you're in full protective mode. So I think that's kind of the way it's been.
Yeah, no, it's been really nice to see kind of the fan base unite, as you said, and but still, there remains division regarding the way in which Arsenal are approaching this transfer window and how we're kind of looking to bring in players. Because as of the 18th of January, so far, we haven't brought anyone in. I mean, we've brought players back from kind of their loan deals, but we've not brought players in. What we have done, just to piss off the other people as well even further, is to let more players go, which is the irony is there. But there was always kind of the plan with Pablo Mari. Although I'm a little bit more surprised about Pablo Mari leaving, I suppose, with the how quickly things can change, as Liverpool will be able to attest to from their centre back issues last season. Kolasinac, we always knew was going to move on. What do you make of kind of the idea, and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, of course, too, which is a big talking point. What do you make of kind of the outgoings and a little bit of naivety, especially in the Ainsley Maitland-Niles bracket?
Yeah, I mean, that was the one that was sort of most, not confusing, I guess, but if you were to look at the players who are have gone or who will go, he's probably the most useful of them in that he can play a number of positions. He could play right back. He could play in midfield. We knew that Thomas Partey was going to go away, but I think it was a case that there was an opportunity for him to go to Roma. They didn't want to stand in his way. They've probably made their minds up about Ainsley now and decided that, look, in reality, he's not going to play a great deal for us unless there's a crisis or an emergency. So, is it right to hold on to him for 3 more weeks, 4 more weeks, which might potentially put a move somewhere at risk, and then he sits another 4 or 5 months not playing very much. So I think that's probably the thinking behind that one. Balogun going to Middlesbrough, I mean, he had to go somewhere and start playing on a regular basis or start playing some more senior football, because he's not going to make any progress if we do that. And look, it's not like he's been in the squad every week and we're missing a player who's contributed a lot this season, so you can see the logic behind that one. Pablo Mari, I think, is an interesting one, and Kolasinac as well. We're well stocked at left back, Tierney and Tavares at left back, so we're not necessarily going to miss Kolasinac. And again, I think this is one where there's an opportunity for Marseille to do something before their transfer ban kicks in. And that might have expedited or expedited rather that particular move. Pablo Mari to Udinese. Look, the only thing I can think of is that they feel like they've got sufficient cover at centre half with Gabriel, Ben White, Holding, Tommy Asu can play in there if need be. Kieran Tierney can play in there if need be. So they feel like they've probably got enough in there. And another guy who realistically doesn't have much of a future with us. So there's my rationale for that. The other side of it, I suppose, is that we are, if you look at it, maybe clearing out some room for an arrival or two. I don't know. I mean, Kolasinac and Pablo Mari going is 2 non-homegrown players going. So maybe that's part of the thinking as well, that in order to bring some players in, we need to make some room in the squad as well.
Regarding incomings, the main story is obviously, without dressing it up, Dusan Vlahovic and the chase of the striker. I'm not going to outright ask you whether or not you think that he's going to arrive. What I want to ask you is kind of what you've made of the crazy kind of spectrum of reporting that we've seen along this. One day it's, he has no interest in joining Arsenal. The next day it's the agent's the big problem. The next day it's Arsenal have lodged a bid. Why would they lodge a bid if the player hadn't had any interest in coming to Arsenal? The next day it's Fiorentina have no interest in selling. The spectrum of reporting around this story has been so broad. How have you kind of followed it yourself, and where has it kind of led you to rest on an opinion with the move?
Well, I think it's probably representative of the spectrum of media that are covering this. Like, it's not just one local newspaper in Florence. It's Italian football websites and Fiorentina websites and transfer websites and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it lends itself to all kinds of reporting because it's the kind of story that generates huge interest from Arsenal fans. We talked about Arsenal fans being a powerful force on Twitter, but Arsenal fans, as a collective, there's a lot of us out there. A lot of us want information. A lot of us want transfer news. If you can direct tens of thousands of people to your website or whatever, it's pretty useful for you. You know what I mean? So I think it's just part of the modern media landscape that we live in. It's hard to know what exactly is reliable. It's hard to know, what aspects of this we should pin our hats to in a way. There was a very good interview with the owner of Fiorentina. It was in the Financial Times.
Yeah.
It was a very good read. He's an American businessman of Italian descent who basically
Joe Barone was his name.
I can't remember his name now. Yeah, but he thinks football is absolutely insane. Like the way football clubs are run and transfers are run with agents, like agents want to be paid by clubs to do transfers, which, if you step back and think about it, it's absolutely nuts. Like an agent represents a player, whatever the player earns, or, should be the agent takes his slice of that. But we all know that's not how it works, where you have intermediaries and agents being paid by clubs to broker deals and all of this kind of thing. So he's like absolutely opposed to being ripped off by agents. Like if Fiorentina want to sell Vlahovic for 70 million, he's not then going to give 10 million of that to the agent, so it feels complicated to me. I that's the one thing that strikes me about this. It feels complicated because of Fiorentina, because of the January transfer window. It's difficult to do deals in January, although I think the reason Arsenal might be pushing this now is because it's probably our best chance to get this guy. If we really want him, maybe in the summer Juventus can raise the money. Maybe somebody else in Europe will raise the money come the summer, which he might feel is a bit more up his street. I don't know, but my general sense of this one is that there are agents involved who are going to be quite difficult to deal with, who will want their cut of whatever comes around, whether it's from Arsenal, from Fiorentina, from the player, from both. And then I do think, I can't read inside the mind of the player, but nothing I've read suggests that he's absolutely jumping to get to Arsenal. And he might have reservations about this club's ability to get into the Champions League next season, which is maybe what he wants. And on that basis, you wouldn't blame him. We're in a good position and we need someone like him to give us that push, but there's no guarantee. Whereas if you're going to a Liverpool, a Chelsea, a Man City, you're getting Champions League football. So the whole thing feels really, really complicated. I don't have any particular insight into it more than that, or how much we're pushing, but it does seem we want him, but it feels like there's a lot to get through before we get to the end of this one.
Yeah, I've said for a few days, it's got the feeling of one that if it would happen at the end of the window, because it's so tricky and there's so many obstacles to get past. And in the chat box, I mean, obviously I've been doing the 8 a.m. shows every day, and I don't think there's a day gone by when we've not discussed Vlahovic. And one of the really common comments that I get in the chat box is ones like these from Hamza, who says, "I'm fed up with the Vlahovic saga. It reminds me of the Maddison and Lautaro sagas in the summer. Just move on. It's not happening." And without completely dismissing these types of comments, what I get, not frustrated, but I get actually a little bit confused, I suppose, because us as Arsenal fans for so long have, sat by with the club doing deals that have been, a little bit left field more times than not. We haven't had too many Aubameyangs, Ozils, Alexis type deals in the last, 9 years since 2013 when they begun. And this type of deal and these links, where there's clearly credibility in the sense that Arsenal are interested in the player, that they want the player, that they're trying to do as much as they can to see if they can get this over the line. that it gives me hope and it gives me that positive attitude about Edu, about the recruitment setup, about the kind of strategy in place and the ambition of the club. Do you get that same sense that there's kind of maybe a change and a shift in the ambition of the signings that we want to try and make?
Well, I mean, he does fit into the bracket of signings that we made in the summer. What is he, 21, 22?
Yeah, 21.
You
Yeah.
know, so he's the same age bracket. He is obviously a high-profile guy, scored a lot of goals in Serie A. He's a player who's really come to the fore. So I wouldn't necessarily put him in the Ozil Alexis bracket quite yet, but when you look back on it, I mean, the two things that give me some optimism, not necessarily about this deal in particular, are that, you know, we are targeting a player of that age. So we're looking for somebody who's going to be the striker for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, right? We're looking for a long-term solution to the striker situation. So I like that. I've completely forgotten what the second thing I like about this is. So you'll have to but in terms of confidence or how I think it will go, yeah, I like that we're trying to sign a player who is clearly very talented and at an age where there's room for development and room for potential and room for him to grow. You know, you're not bringing somebody in at 26, 27 where, you know, he's probably the finished article. Yeah, the other thing I was going to say was it's a recognition of what we need, of what we absolutely need in this team, right? That we need the striker. It's not Aubameyang at the moment, and it hasn't really been Aubameyang for a while. It's not Lacazette, even though, you know, some of the work he's done of late has been really good. He doesn't have the ability to couple that work with the job of a striker. And I think that's what's quite interesting about Vlahovic is his ability to do the work that Lacazette has been doing in terms of linking up play and playing with his back to goal, but also giving us a presence in the penalty box. So that's where I'm confident. It means they know what's missing and they know what's needed. Whether they can do it or not, we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, it is not the case where they're going, well, we've got Eddie Nketiah and we've got Lacazette, we've got Aubameyang, and that's probably good enough. I mean, I don't realistically think we're going to get top 4 unless we get someone to score 10 to 12 goals in that forward position between now and the end of the season. And I, you know, like you and like everyone watching, I'm sure I love what Smith Rowe has done this season, but it's clearly come at a bit of a physical cost to him because he's been out injured. Martinelli, love it. Saka, love it. Odegaard, love it. But we miss that presence. We miss that someone up front who can really provide the threat when in games when we're on top, we can really hammer home the advantage and everything else. So
do you think Lacazette's introduction has kind of emphasized those 4 players that you mentioned? Because I do feel like since Aubameyang's been replaced, who's very much a focal point, he's not an archetypal target man, but just for the lack of a better word, he's a target man in the sense that you want to get the ball to him in those really good positions. He's not like your 6-foot headery type of striker, but he's a target man in the sense that, you know, he's the target for all of the end goal of our attacks. Whereas Lacazette is a lot more, you know, link up kind of styled. He's much more wanting to drop in and collaborate with other players in the team. So if we aren't, say, to get a striker of whatever means before the end of the window, do you think it's such a big miss that Lacazette couldn't give the 10 to 12 goals in the rest of the season and also chip in with other goal contributions?
I don't think he can because he's only scored 3 times this season. I think he's only taken 12 shots all season, something like that. It's very low. And I don't want to downplay the contribution he's made because I think he has made an interesting contribution of late. But ultimately, if you're a centre forward, you need to be in there. You need to be scoring goals. So it's going to present a bit of an issue because I think if we can't get a striker in January, they have to have the Aubameyang conversation.
Yeah.
Like, can he be reintegrated? Is there a 4 or 5 month redemption arc for Aubameyang at this club? Because, like, I don't see Eddie scoring the goals You know, we've seen him have some chances of late and he's missed them. Lacazette, we talked about how, you know, that work he does, and I think he quite likes doing it. I think he's better at it than Aubameyang, certainly in terms of dropping deep and bringing others into play. But I feel like sometimes he plays too deep for my liking. He just plays a little bit too deep, and I'd like to see him further up the pitch. He doesn't really score the goals. So, you know, when you look at a second half of the season, which is going to be a bit hectic because there are some postponed games and you need firepower. If there's no striker in January, maybe they have to try and sit down and think about, okay, what's the best thing for this football club for the next few months? Can we make this work? Is it possible to make it work? I mean, the thing is, we don't know what it would take. We don't know what it takes for Aubameyang to come back in and be selected again, you know. But yeah, it really depends on what happens. If you think we can get top four with Lacazette and Nketiah, I just, you know, I'm not being critical of them. I just don't think it's enough threat.
Yeah.
The only way maybe is if you repurpose Martinelli as a center forward, and he absolutely has an incredible streak, and he's backed up by, you know, fit again Smith Rowe on the left, and you've got Saka on the right, Odegaard in behind. That'd be the only other option I could think of, but it's not an easy situation for Arsenal. As well as maybe the sort of boost it will give to the team knowing that someone has come in. If you make a big signing in January, I think there's it brings the team and the squad a measure of confidence and, you know, a little bit of something extra that they can take into these final games of the season. So I'm curious to see what happens with this one.
Me too. Strong in the chat box. Thank you so much for the donation. Two of my favorite Arsenal podcasters. Great job, lads. Much love from Canada. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate the kind support. I had a really good sit-down chat with our mutual friend Clive the other week, and we talked through all of kind of the transfer targets that we've been linked to. And just to kind of round off this striker conversation, if it isn't Vlahovic, it does very much look like, you know, it wouldn't be him in the summer because another team that has more capacity to spend would likely take priority over him, unless maybe we get Champions League and we can offer him something that, again, other teams like Juventus, if they don't necessarily make Champions League, they then can't. Who would be your personal choice for Arsenal in a realistic fashion?
I really liked what I saw of Alexander Isak at the Euros. I thought there was something there. I mean, I look at his record this season for Real Sociedad, and it's not particularly great when it comes to goal scoring. But I just wonder if he might fit the profile of player that we're looking for, because I think there is a very specific physical profile that we are looking for. We're looking for somebody with presence. We're looking for somebody with the ability to give us some aerial threat. We're looking for for someone who can run the channels, who can drop deep, who can get back in there. So I like him. I know he's got a release clause. I think it's 70 odd. Maybe it's more. I think
it's 80 million euros, maybe even 90 million euros.
Right.
It's ridiculously high. Yeah.
This is the thing, though. If you want to buy a top striker,
you pay that much.
You pay that much. So your only other option is you ring up Arsene Wenger and say, remember that time you brought in Eduardo and nobody had ever heard of him? Could you find us another one like that from somewhere, please? But I don't think those players exist anymore. You know, there's so much information now, so much data, so much scouting, so much YouTube. There is not a player out there who doesn't have, you know, a YouTube compilation which makes him look brilliant. So it's very difficult to find that kind of player. He's one I like. I think the Jonathan David as well is an interesting prospect too. Yeah. But again, these are deals that I don't think are doable in January. I think the reason the Vlahovic one is quite interesting is because of his contractual situation. You know, he's got 18 months. His value right now is as high as it is going to be. You know, so if they sell him now, he's got 18 months. That will affect the transfer price. Whereas if you get down to 12 months, then it becomes a bit more difficult. Then their negotiating hand becomes a bit more difficult. He might say, you know what? I'll stay. I'll have another year here. I like it here in Fiorentina. I'll just stay. And they'd be like, hang on a minute. Because in that Financial Times article, it was like the transfer value of Vlahovic is equal to the turnover of the annual turnover of Fiorentina, which is 75 million euros, which seem very low to me, but it's clearly a very significant sum for that football club. So that is something that they have to take into consideration. I think that's probably why there's so much chatter about that. But it's hard to know. I like Isaac or Isaac. Apologies to Swedish listeners, but I'm not quite sure which way to pronounce it. But I like his ability on the ball. He's tall, he's quick, he's rangy. He did score a lot of goals for Sociedad last season. Maybe not so much this season, but he's still very young and the right age. And I think that's part of what we're looking at as well, is bringing somebody into this group who is, even if they come in as, let's say, a star striker signing, is kind of on like the same level as your Ramsdale, your Ben White, your Tomiyasu, your Gabriel, Martin Odegaard. Like he's not coming in as like, I am the big star here.
But with the potential to be
with potential, but he's got that the age profile means that he comes in and he's just one of those lads, So I think that's probably what they're looking at.
Let's jump into the chat box and take some questions for the last 10 or 15 minutes of the show. Graham Caldwell asking, Andrew, do you think we should make a bid for a midfielder like a Bruno Guimaraes, who's the Brazilian midfielder at Lyon, pay the 40 million and get him now? Then we can sign a striker on loan and sign a priority striker in the summer.
The only thing I would say to that is, like, I like him. He's a good-looking player, isn't he? But what striker do you get on loan in January that's worth anything? Who lets a good striker go? Nobody.
The one I keep bringing up is Luka Jovic is the only one I see as possibly a loan option. But he's just not worked out at Real Madrid since he left Frankfurt. So
that's a gamble, isn't it? It's just sort of like, I'm not saying he's the same kind of player, but when you bring in somebody who hasn't really played a great deal during a season, you're bringing in somebody at a key moment of the season who's not quite match fit. I mean, we saw it with Denis Suarez, a guy who'd been sidelined for most of the season at Barcelona, picked up an injury and just couldn't play for us. So I think that would be the issue that I have with that. Like, I think we should be signing a midfielder like Guimaraes. He's a nice player, but I don't know who we can get on loan in the striker market in January that's worth it. I mean, maybe we don't sign a striker on loan and we go back to what I was saying about either Martinelli or Aubameyang. Maybe that's the decision. But, I think everyone could see or can see that another midfielder is an important part of this team's development,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's really difficult if you can't sign someone now. The need to bring someone in a reinforcement role to Lacazette, if Aubameyang's if we're not going to have that conversation, as you say, with Aubameyang, it feels like something's better than nothing. But is that something really worth going for if actually they don't work out? But we've had Denis Suarez's, we've had Martin Odegaard's, who had like a really solid impact and so good we wanted to sign him. So it is a gamble, and maybe sometimes a gamble when there's a chance of getting top four can be worth it. Pramod says, goodly morning, as Andrew would say. I am of the opinion that we need a midfielder more than a centre forward. I understand that striker would transform this team, but I think it's stability before transformation. How do you feel about that?
Well, look, Thomas Partey is going to be back soon. I think Ghana are playing tonight, so it depends on what happens there as to whether they go through, whether he'd be back in time for Burnley. If they went out, I'm not quite sure. We know that Granit Xhaka is suspended, of course, for a couple of games. Do have Albert Sambi, Mohamed El Neni will be there. Like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely think that a midfield signing is crucial. I think striker and midfielder are the two areas that we really need to focus on for obvious reasons with striker, but also in midfield because, well, Xhaka is Xhaka and Partey's not getting any younger anyway. I like Sambi, but he's still pretty young and he's still learning his trade. Maitland-Niles is gone. El Neni's going to go in the summer, so it's clear that a midfielder has got to come in. I think if you were to ask me right now in this window which one I would prefer, like, let's imagine we've got a great midfield signing and a great center forward signing. I would take a center forward now and the midfielder in the summer. that's maybe just me, but I feel like the goals that we need to get into the top 4 are not going to come from having a very good central midfielder who, I don't mean to say that player couldn't improve us, of course, but if you were to give me that choice right now, I know it's not a realistic choice. Like, do you want a great striker or a great midfielder? I'll take but I would take the striker, because I just think that added threat is really something. I give an example of where I think it benefits a team. I know he wasn't necessarily a striker, but I've given this example a few times. In January of 2004, we signed Jose Antonio Reyes from Sevilla for £16 million. Our record signing at the time, and it remained our record signing for quite a long time.
Arshavin, I think, was the next one. Yeah.
And then, but Reyes came into a team that had Thierry Henry, Kanu, Dennis Bergkamp, Sylvain Wiltord, Freddie Ljungberg, Robert Pires. There's no shortage of goals in that team. But when it came to the January market, Wenger wasn't looking for another midfielder. He brought in another attacker, brought in somebody else who could give us threat. And in the end, a couple of Reyes goals towards the end of that season helped us go invincible. So maybe, if we can find that forward signing, it could help us get top 4.
Manas asks a really intriguing question. Since Murray and Kolasinac have left, the average age has again lowered. Should we get some older and experienced players in?
That's a great question. That is a great question, because you can see that the average age is going down and down and down with this team.
We've got a nursery. That's what we've got. We've got a nursery.
We do, but it's working very well. I think the thing you would say is that you can't just bring in experience for experience sake. You need quality to go with that experience. Willian was experienced. Didn't really work out. There is a benefit to experience. There is certainly a benefit when you've got a very young squad to having some players in there who can, been there, done that, worn the t-shirt, been through all the match day scenarios, been through all the scenarios you can go through during a season, and who can maybe put some things in perspective for some young players. But then I also think that's the job of the manager and his coaching staff, to be able to transmit that to the young players that, okay, this is not great, but you'll find a way through it, or this is how we get through it, etc., etc. I think it's to do with experience. If you can find the right player who's got experience and quality, absolutely. But don't just bring in experience for the sake of experience. It's not quite, I don't think that's the right mix. And I think what one interesting aspect of what we've done, if you look at the signings that we've made in the last little while, these young players, would you say that personality and character is a bit of a common denominator?
I feel like it's an expectation of Arteta. I feel like the players that he wants in this team, you need a certain level of, that mentality, the personality, the commitment, drive, the ambition. There is an expectation that you will do as is. And if you don't, you're Matteo Guendouzi and you're gone.
But what I'm sort of suggesting is that there is like, if you look at the way Ramsdale is distributed, you know what I mean? I just mean that they've got some personality and some character traits, which I think are quite similar. Ramsdale, big character, personality. Tomiyasu, very quiet, in comparison to Ramsdale, but like, this guy is switched on, and absolutely the work ethic, everything about him fits perfectly with Arteta. Ben White, maybe people looked at him at the start of the season and said, he's a bit soft. Actually, don't see it. Gabriel, who came in last year, Martin Odegaard, leader, captain of Norway, Sambi, captain of Anderlecht. They're bringing in guys who have something about them in terms of their personalities, which I think is really quite interesting. Smith Rowe and Saka have come through the academy. Martinelli, another one who's just switched on and ready to give everything. And I think that is going to be part of this, whatever else we do in terms of recruitment. I think I don't think you can separate those things. So I think they're looking for the quality, but I also think they're looking for character too.
It's also interesting how they've added to the recruitment team as well with some recent scouts. And you'd imagine that the rigorous kind of looking into who they were going to add to that recruitment team would have been done with, these are our expectations. We want to find players, as you say, with these types of characteristics about them. So over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, however many transfer winners that they're going to be here, it will be intriguing to see kind of that, the profile of figure that they bring in. Mr. Joe Kerr says, do you feel that this latest incident, fairly or not, will be the final straw for Xhaka and Aubameyang potentially too? No bias bashing, but this latest red could maybe cost us a cup final. Is it enough?
Like, I don't really see the Xhaka one as similar to some of the other things he's done. It's not like where he grabbed the Burnley guy and that was just stupid. He got sent off stupidly. I think he was trying his best to get the ball, didn't get anywhere near it and got a red card. I think it's just clumsy. So I don't know that you could really say, well, this is it now with Granit Xhaka. I don't see that being the case. Certainly I don't see the case that being the case this season when, we've spoken about midfield and the need to bolster our midfield. I do wonder if next summer if we brought in a Guimaraes or Tielemans or a player like that, we might then see Xhaka being a bit more peripheral. But I don't,
he doesn't strike me as a player who'd be okay with that.
No, I don't think he would either. I don't think he would either. But, he also signed a new deal or signed a contract extension knowing probably that Arsenal have got their eyes on midfield reinforcements at some point as well. So, I wouldn't expect him to be happy, but then I think that's all right. I don't mind that. I don't mind a player who is unhappy at not playing. It creates a decent environment, I think, when you have players who want to play all the time. Will it cost us a cup final? I don't know. I mean, look, we acquitted ourselves brilliantly when we went down to 10 men against Liverpool. I thought we were just fantastic. I didn't know we had that in us, especially against a team like Liverpool, who I know were weakened, but you could not say that was a weak Liverpool team. No way. So I don't think we have much choice with Xhaka, between now and the end of the season. We may be in a position where we don't have any choice with Aubameyang. But again, we don't quite know what the scenario is there or what it would take. So, look, if Xhaka does something absolutely ridiculous in his next game, then I think it's a different conversation. But in those circumstances, he was diligent. He was aware of the danger. He's just not quick enough or athletic enough to deal with it. And that, that in itself is probably a better reason to talk about the end of Granit Xhaka than simply just being sent off. It's the fact that we do need somebody in that position who isn't going to get caught out that way.
Yeah, I think, when did we buy Xhaka? It was 2016. Yeah. And the fact that the amount of errors that we've seen from him, the consistency in some of his performances has been really good, especially his passing wise and kind of what he does to that left flank. But the inconsistency in regards to the errors, or rather the consistency, I suppose, in the errors that we get from him, and obviously the ill-discipline with the red cards. If it turned out that in 2022 or 2023 we were moving on from him because his time as a player had come to an end, like that in itself is a staggering kind of concept.
He's just a bit of a mad. I don't know whether I don't want to say he's mad, but I don't know. Just everything around him is like a giant soap opera, If
only there was like a documentary being filmed of him this season. There
is always something going on with him, and there has been pretty much ever since he arrived. When he arrived, and Arsene Wenger said he's a box-to-box midfield player, it was like, oh, great. And then a few weeks later, Arsene Wenger was going, well, no, I'm not sure he's necessarily a box.
Yeah.
It's like nobody quite knew what they were getting with Granit Xhaka. And every so often he just, does something that makes him the center of attention again. But I think that's, at this point, he is what he is. He knows it. Mikel Arteta knows it. We all know it. I don't know what else we can do other than just kind of get on with it until such time as he is what he is somewhere else.
I think he was one of those where the stat DNA made him look like a shining light of the world-class ability. I mean, whenever I do the tactical breakdown shows and he's in kind of a statistical comparison, he comes out really well all the time. So, yeah, I think that's probably where
that's why eyes are useful as well. You know?
The famous eye test. Zeus suggesting Wijnaldum on loan, as is We Are the Arsenal. Rahul, thank you for the donation, suggesting we should go for Frank Kessié at AC Milan as a possible option too. Artur is obviously the other big link that we've seen too. It'll be intriguing. I agree with you, Andrew. I think that striker is clearly the priority. It has to be a priority of where we sit, but there remains just under 2 weeks left of the window, and we'll see what happens. To round off, Andrew, very simple question to finish. How many players are coming in? I'm going to put you on the spot. Prediction-wise, I don't want to ask for names because that's too mean, but how many players do you think will be in?
Go on, I'll say 2.
Oh,
and I've got no information that that's the case. But I think, like I said at the start, I think the fact that we're clearing the decks a little bit, that we're moving out some players, feels just a bit like we're making some room in the squad. And I know it's felt quite urgent, hasn't it? Because we were expecting a North London derby and we were expecting to be a bit more fatigued because we had Liverpool, then the derby, then another Liverpool, blah, blah, blah. But you know, we've got the Burnley game and then there's nothing for a little while, or certainly nothing on the schedule. So I don't think it's quite as urgent as maybe we were thinking. And then in the final week of the window, you know, it's Monday is the 24th, isn't it? So there's a full week there with no game scheduled at this moment in time. So that gives them a chance to do things. So let's hope they can do it. I'd like a couple, because I just feel like we need that push as a team. We need just that extra bit in the squad to get us over the line for a top 4 place, or to secure a European place, a top 6 place at the very least. So let's keep fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think you struggle to find someone who disagree, to be honest. I think that we all think that the 2 is the minimum, really, that we're looking for. Andrew, thank you so much, mate, as always, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time. Tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
What are we going to be up to? All the usual bits and bobs, post-game podcasts, Arsecast extras, preview podcasts over on Patreon every day, on the blog at arseblog.com, and you can find everything from there. So, yeah, that's it.
Lovely stuff. You can find Andrew on Twitter at Arseblog. Make sure, if you're not following, I'm sure you are, but if you're not, please make sure you do. You can follow ourselves at the Gooner Talk TV, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel as well, and drop a like on the video to show that you've enjoyed it. And even if you haven't, still do drop a like on the video, just out of anger, pure anger. Just hit that thumbs up button.
Angry likes the best kind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was someone in the chat the other day who threatened light electrocution if you didn't drop a like, as if like if you don't get it, it's a small electric shock's going to come through your laptop. So
I can think of a few people I'd like to do that to. In fairness,
Granite Xhaka. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We will see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.